Remember when we were kids, terrified of the creepy monsters under our beds? Well, believe it or not, reality hits way harder. As we grow older, we realize that real-life monsters are far more terrifying than anything we ever imagined. And today, we'll explore 15 disturbing interviews with truly evil people caught on camera. And trust us, once you see and hear what these individuals have done, you won't be able to sleep at night. They are monsters in the form of human skin. Number 15. Robert Pickton. Robert's story is so twisted it almost sounds made up, but it's real. A pig farmer in British Columbia, Pickton, turned his isolated farm into something out of a nightmare. He preyed on women from Vancouver's downtown east side, most of them vulnerable, living hard lives. He'd invite them to parties at his farm, then they'd vanish. For years, no one noticed. But when police finally searched the property in 2002, they found remains. And it got worse. Some human remains were mixed into ground meat he used to make sausages. In a secretly recorded jail cell conversation, Pickton bragged about his crimes like he were proud. He was convicted of 6 murders, but investigators believe he killed dozens more. They just didn't have the evidence to charge him. Pickton wasn't a raging lunatic. He was quiet, calculated, and completely sick. His interviews aren't loud or angry, they're casual, and that's what makes them so hard to watch. Number 14. Edmund Kemper. Edmund isn't just some average killer. He's an absolute tower of a man, standing at 6 feet 9 inches. But what made him so lethal wasn't just his size. It was the calm, intelligent way he carried himself. With an above-average IQ and unsettlingly relaxed demeanor, Kemper knew how to lure people in. His interviews, of which there are plenty, are hard to forget. Not because he screams, but because he speaks like he's chatting over coffee. He talks about killing like it's no big deal. He began with objects, then animals, and by 15, he killed both his grandparents, just to see how it felt. Later, he calmly detailed how he killed his own mother, even decapitating and defiling her corpse. And the chilling part? He was fully aware of what he was. He called himself a walking time bomb. He wasn't out of control. He understood every bit of it, and chose not to stop. Number 13. Samuel Little. Until recently, most people had never even heard of Samuel Little, but he's now considered one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. If you don't believe it, just ask GPT or search on Google. The way he speaks in interviews is disturbing, not just because of what he says, but how he says it. He sounds like a chatty old man recounting fond memories, even smiling, even laughing. There's this bizarre warmth to his tone as he talks about the women he murdered. And that's exactly how he managed to lure them in. He didn't seem like a threat. He blended in, joked, and played the role. He once described drowning a woman and casually added that she was the only one he killed that way. In interviews, he claims 8 murders but confesses to over 90. He talks like a man recalling a life of adventure, not a spree of horror. The most terrifying part isn't just the body count, it's that he remembers each one vividly and fondly. Number 12. Richard Francis Cottingham. Richard Francis Cottingham, also known as the Torso Killer and the Times Square Ripper, committed crimes so brutal they sound like horror fiction. He targeted women in New York and New Jersey during the 60s and 70s, often leaving behind gruesome crime scenes that earned him his chilling nickname. What sets Cottingham apart from other monsters is how casually he talks about it. In interviews, he doesn't yell or ramble. He's composed, even smug. He talks about living a double life, regular guy by day, sadistic murderer by night. He admits he used charm to gain trust, only to switch into someone completely different. When asked why he mutilated one of his victims, his answer was, to try something new. Just like that. No hesitation or remorse. Just a man who treated murder like a hobby. It's not just the crimes that disturb, it's how calmly he reflects on them. as though they were just part of a lifestyle he didn't mind living. Number 11. Gary Michael Hilton. Gary Michael Hilton lived like a shadow, hiding in the forests of Georgia, Florida, and North Carolina. He targeted hikers, campers, anyone vulnerable and alone in remote woods. For years, he slipped through the cracks, even though his crimes stretched across states. But at 78, he finally sat down and confessed. In the interview, he looks directly into the camera and says, "It's time." Just like that, with no emotion. When asked why, he confessed after all these years his answer was cold and simple. "Because I'm going to die soon." Hilton didn't flinch when called a psychopath. "No," he corrected, "sociopath. I've got a bit of that in me." When the term serial killer came up, he laughed it off like it was just a label, like it didn't mean a damn thing. His words weren't what made it terrifying. It was the indifference. He knew exactly what he'd done and didn't lose a minute of sleep over it. In our opinion, this guy had lost his humanity. Number 10. Gary Ridgway. Gary Ridgway, or as people love to call him, the Green River Killer, murdered beautiful ladies for years without blinking or thinking. He targeted those less likely to be missed right away, women on the margins, the vulnerable, the forgotten. He gained their trust, sometimes even using a photo of his son to appear safe. He would open his wallet, let them see the picture, then strike when they let their guard down. In one interview, he talks about killing a woman while his own son slept nearby. "I killed her," he said flatly. Pretty sure he didn't see it. That was Ridgway, stone cold. No rage, no remorse, just words that hit like a brick. He confessed to so many murders, he lost count. Some believe the real number is close to 90, and in court, he barely reacted. Only when victims' families spoke did he show anything close to emotion, and even that felt rehearsed. Ridgway didn't lose control. He controlled everything like a sick fart. Number 9. Stephen McDaniel. Stephen was a quiet law student with a dark obsession. He lived next door to Lauren Giddings, a lady he barely knew but secretly watched, filmed, and murdered. When she went missing in 2011, Stephen stood in front of news cameras and gave an interview like just another concerned neighbor. He speculated on her disappearance and tried to look worried. But when the reporter told him a body had been found, his face dropped instantly. He froze, sat down. That moment became the turning point. Later, a search of his apartment turned up hidden recordings, stalking logs, and evidence that linked him directly to her killing. He confessed to strangling and dismembering her right there in his own apartment. He acted like a shy, nervous student. But beneath that was someone fully capable of taking a life and hiding the truth. The entire interview, in hindsight, plays like a sick performance from someone who thought he wouldn't get caught. Number 8. Matthew Haverly. Matthew gave an interview on the local news as if he were just another shocked neighbor. A body had been found in a nearby creek, and Haverly stepped up to speculate. He talked about how the area would be a good place to dump a body. He even floated the idea that it might have been a mob hit. The whole time he was calm, almost too relaxed, with a weird little smirk on his face. He mentioned way too many details. Something was off. And not long after, the truth came out. The body in the creek was his own mother's. He had struck her in the head and dumped her behind their house. His calm on-camera presence suddenly looked like arrogance. He pleaded no contest later to manslaughter and evidence tampering. But that interview? That was the real story. A man pretending to be part of the crowd, while hiding the fact that he was the killer. Number 7. Arthur Shawcross. Arthur, known as the Genesee River Killer, might be one of the most unsettling interviewees ever caught on film. He talks about killing people the way someone would talk about errands. No feeling or regret, just cold, blunt facts. When asked why he murdered, he simply said, "I just snapped." He says that over and over, like it explains everything. In one moment, he even describes what one of his victims tasted like, comparing it to burnt pork. He smiles and then talks about something completely unrelated. The switch is jarring. One minute he's discussing cannibalism, the next he's casually talking about food or TV. Psychologists say he shows classic traits of manipulation and zero empathy. Shawcross claimed he acted out due to a troubled past and brain damage. But those who've studied him say that's just a cover. Watching him speak, it's clear. He didn't lose control. He simply didn't care. And that's what makes him so terrifying. Number 6. Stephen Port. Stephen Port didn't look like a predator. He was quiet, worked as a chef, and lived alone in a London apartment. But between 2014 and 2015, he used dating apps to target young men, luring them in with lies, drugging them, and leaving their bodies in plain sight, sometimes right outside his own building. In his interviews, he comes across as hesitant and emotionless, constantly changing his story. He insists he just found the bodies. At one point, he says, "He was just lying there. I didn't know what to do." Again and again, he plays the clueless bystander. The worst part? Police actually believed him. For months, he got away with it, even though the deaths were happening in the same area with the same patterns. It wasn't until later that they realized he had tampered with evidence, lied, and manipulated everyone around him. His interviews don't feel dangerous, they feel empty, and somehow that makes them even worse. Number 5. Ted Bundy. Ted was born on November 24, 1946 in Burlington. He didn't look like a predator, smart, charming, and good-looking, but that facade was his deadliest weapon. He faked injuries, asked women for help, then struck. His killing spree began in 1974 and escalated fast. He bludgeoned victims, strangled them, and defiled their corpses. His arrest came in 1975, not for murder, but speeding. Inside his Volkswagen, police found handcuffs, a crowbar, and rope. That small arrest cracked the case wide open. By 1977, while on trial in Colorado, Bundy escaped from the courthouse by leaping from a library window. Months later, he escaped again, this time through a hole in his cell ceiling. In Florida, he attacked 4 women at the Chi Omega sorority, killing 2. Then he abducted and murdered 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. He gave smug interviews, denying guilt at first, smiling, calm, and relaxed. But on death row, his tone shifted. Number 4. Susan Atkins. Susan Atkins was born May 7, 1948 in Northern California. Her childhood was a wreck: alcoholic parents, abuse, and neglect. After her mother died of cancer, Susan drifted into petty crime. By 19, she had joined Charles Manson's cult. Manson's grip on her was instant. She followed him to Spahn Ranch, fully embracing his twisted vision of an apocalyptic race war. In July 1969, she helped murder Gary Hinman. A month later, she was sent to the home of Sharon Tate. Inside, Atkins helped restrain the pregnant actress and then watched as she was stabbed to death. She later bragged to inmates that she tasted Tate's blood and used it to write "pig" on the wall. Atkins also took part in the La Bianca murders the next night. She showed zero remorse. During interviews, her expression stayed calm, almost polished. Not one tear. She claimed she was just doing the devil's work. Her death sentence was later commuted to life. Number 3. Charles Manson. Charles was born in 1934 in Cincinnati to a teenage mother who worked as a prostitute. By 1951, he was already in and out of juvenile centers and prisons. His early reports described him as emotionally damaged, manipulative, and desperate for validation. In 1967, after being released from McNeil Island Prison, he relocated to San Francisco and started gathering lost souls into what he called the family. They followed him without question, believing his apocalyptic prophecies and bizarre claim that he was Jesus. In total, they're believed to have carried out 35 murders, although only a handful were tried. Ironically, their first arrest wasn't for murder. It was for vandalism in Death Valley. But when Susan Atkins confessed, everything unraveled. Manson's interviews showed how detached he truly was. When asked about remorse, he snapped, blaming society for everything. Sentenced to death, his penalty was later converted to life. He died in 2017, still delusional, still convinced the world had wronged him. Number 2. Otis Toole. Otis was born March 5, 1947, in Jacksonville, into an environment that warped him from the start. His mother was a religious fanatic who forced him into bizarre rituals. His grandmother practiced Satanism and made him rob graves. He was molested by a sibling and abused by his alcoholic father, who later abandoned him. With an IQ of 75 and no stable upbringing, Toole dropped out in 9th grade and turned to the streets. At 14, he murdered a man who propositioned him, running him over with his car. That act marked the start of a wandering life of violence. Eventually, he met Henry Lee Lucas. Together, they killed indiscriminately across the country. His downfall came after he set fire to a man's house, someone he claimed to have been romantically involved with. Toole loved bragging about his crimes. Before his death in 1996, he claimed responsibility for nearly 100 murders, including the kidnapping and killing of Adam Walsh. Number 1. Gerard John Schaefer. Gerard was born in Wisconsin in 1946, and early signs already pointed toward darkness. As a child, he tormented animals and showed a growing obsession with control and violence. He drifted through life, dropped out of college, jumped between jobs, until 1972, when he landed a badge with the Martin County Sheriff's Office in Florida. That position gave him the authority he'd been craving. Colleagues noticed disturbing shifts. He abused his power, particularly targeting women. In 1973, he pulled over 2 young hitchhikers, lured them into his car under false pretenses, and drove them to a remote location. He intended to kill them, but a radio call forced him to stop, allowing them to escape. 2 months later, he murdered 2 other hitchhikers and buried their bodies in the woods. He was convicted of 2 murders but bragged about many more. In prison, he mocked the justice system and claimed he was better than Ted Bundy, until he was brutally stabbed to death in 1995. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for hanging with us, and we'll see you soon in the next one.